Welcome to Wood Talk. Now here are three guys who always turn the other cheek when cleaning up tenons. Marc, Shannon, and Matt.
What's happening, everybody? It's show number 577, and on today's show we're talking about burnout, a tight riving knife, making big under-bevels, buying bulk lumber, and uneven table legs. Just a heads up, we're going to hopefully get to all those topics depending on how the length of some of the discussions go, but that's what we got.
Or whether or not we burn out halfway through.
Yeah, we might burn out. You never know. All that and more coming up, but first we want to let you know that this show is proudly sponsored by you and some crappy ads, but mostly by you, and Matt's going to tell you how you can help us out.
If you want to help support the show, you can absolutely, totally, positively do so by going to patreon.com/woodtalk and sign up to become a patron of the show. This week we're thanking no one because we're awful people and no one loves us. Is what it says here.
I wrote that.
So there you go.
That was me.
So no new patrons to thank this week, but if you do sign up to become a patron, your name will be listed here for me to say and possibly say incorrectly. And of course, you get access to the ad-free version of the show where you get to hear all the awkward pauses where the ads would be inserted, and you can carry on your life without having to skip those things. So I suggest doing that at patreon.com/woodtalk. And thank you, Marc, for this. I can't even read that. What does it say?
Just making it visually interesting.
Oh.
It says lego.com, but it says the Wood Whisperer.
I thought you were trying to show me something. I'm like, I can't read it. It's too blurry.
No, I know. It's hard. I can't get the camera to focus. It's a minifig that it's the show. Todd actually got this minifig for me, and it came with a cat, and he's tried to
by the tail.
That's how I'm holding. That's how I hold Oreo. And he tried to Sharpie marker the cat so it's black.
Nice,
but didn't quite finish it. So this was a nice gift from Todd. Pretty awesome.
It's a cat in blackface. That's
Hey, easy.
Hey,
easy there.
Hey, you're holding it.
You're gonna get us canceled again.
Again, after the last show. Okay, so we're gonna get into a little bit of kickback here before we get into our burnout discussion. Kind of that classic dining table discussion we used to have a while back.
I thought that was just a new segment of the show. We have kickback and then we have burnout.
Yeah. Well, at this stage of the game,
might as well.
Likely. We may as well. Jason wrote in. He said, I wanted to provide some feedback about woodworking with kids. I have had almost no luck woodworking with my kids. They're just not interested, but both my kids are in Scouts. For Cub Scouts, the 3rd grade program and the 4th, 5th grade programs both have woodworking-based achievements that Scouts can earn. Scouts BSA has a woodworking merit badge. I led the Cub Scouts achievements for my kids' den, and the Scouts seemed to enjoy it. The work that they had to do was relatively simple, and their parents helped in my shop, but they were engaged, even my kid. I believe we built tic-tac-toe boards, toolboxes, step stools, things like that. Even if you and your family have no interest in scouting, which you should, wonderful program. Am I right, Matt? You could contact your local Cub Scout pack or BSA troop and offer to teach those specific areas. And it's equal opportunity. BSA has been co-ed since 2019. Anyway, wanted to offer that as a way of potentially getting your kids or other kids into our wonderful craft. Or we would let the kids all end up as knitters, which we do not want. Unless there's a knitting merit badge.
I was going to say, yeah.
We said the same thing at the same time. I love it. Ava is in Girl Scouts or Brownies or whatever they call it at that age. Mm-hmm. Mateo has, if there's zero interest, he would be less than that in his level of interest in that stuff. So the kids are who they are. I'll just say that. But that's cool. Great tip. Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that, man. Well, let's get into the discussion. This came about because I experienced some burnout. And in the past, I've had moments of temporary crisis of oh, my inbox is too full. This is very frustrating to me. I'm going to whine about it for a week. That's what it's like to live with Marc. Ask Nicole. I should probably bring her on for this discussion.
Great.
Right. But what happened last week felt different. And we've answered countless times. I think we've gotten questions on this show specifically about, hey, I'm not really in the mood to build anything. What do you guys do to get yourself back into it, right? And we always kind of have our individual answers and techniques we use for that. But what happened to me last week, it hit differently. This was post Woodworking in America, which was a good experience. I should have been feeling really good and positive about things. But in the last couple of years, there have been some troubling financial changes in the way the business works. Speaking about the Wood Whisperer and the Guild, where everything keeps becoming more expensive, and we can't seem to just keep raising prices to compensate for that. Of course, there's so many more people doing what we do. There's so many more people, doing paid courses. There's just a lot of competition for people's money. And overall, if you ask people, I think the general vibe, especially post-COVID and onward, is that people are having, trouble making ends meet. So who is spending extra money on woodworking education, right? It's just a lot fewer people. And Matt, you can attest to the challenges of maintaining sponsorships in 2024, or getting any advertisers
that none. Yeah,
like none,
none,
or advertisers that are relevant to what we do. None? I mean, if you want to advertise, games on your phone, or a mattress company, or like weird Chinese products, sure, you can get those ads, but you don't want to do that necessarily if you don't have to. But that's what's available to us a lot. So anyway, put all that in. And all the changes that we've made to the Guild in this last year with the creation of Guild Plus, the effort we're making to kind of pivot what we're doing to double down on the community, it hit me really hard because I've just pivoted into doing stuff with the business that I don't actually find as fun as what I was doing before. And the reality hit me that all this time I've been going on kind of running my own race. Like, in spite of the fact that YouTube really exploded and there was a game, like a playbook for how you approach YouTube, and I ignored it. Why? Because I could. Because I didn't have to play the same games. I was there early. It was pretty easy for me to just, I'm not going to say coast because I worked very hard, but I did the kind of work I wanted to do. I made the kind of videos I wanted to make. And in spite of the changes that were happening around me, I was able to keep doing the thing that I love to do. And I don't think I can keep doing that anymore. If I want to maintain relevance, if I want my business to continue to grow, and I don't need exponential growth. I just want to pay everybody who works for us a fair salary. And I want to make sure my kids are taken care of and, just the basics. So all of that hit me at once. And I suddenly reached a point of true burnout. And I actually watched some videos. I read some articles to kind of understand a little bit more about what that meant and like what made this different for me than other times when I was just, I guess you could just say, overwhelmed by the amount of work that I had. What made this different was a couple of the signs: feeling stuck and just like irritated at every little thing that I'm going to need to do for the job, and really overwhelmed by the simplest of tasks. And that was something that was like just answering my emails. I'm like, I don't want to do it. And the one thing that was very different from any other time that I've had this kind of thing creep up was indifference. I didn't care. I just went into work and I'm like, I have zero motivation. I could care less what happens today. I just need to get out of here. I'm going to go for a bike ride. It was a really awful feeling that stuck with me for about 3 or 4 days. And I'll tell you how I got out of it. But what made it different than the past was zero inspiration to design. I looked around, and whereas all of my life as a woodworker, when I see something cool, I just it doesn't matter if I need it. I just want to build it. I just want the experience of building it. And I would look at stuff and I paged through a couple of books to try to see if I could unlock some inspiration. And I'm like, gosh dang it, I don't want to do any of this. Like, none of this is interesting to me, and no one needs a piece of furniture right now. So I have zero motivation, and that was awkward. That was really weird. I was very uncomfortable in that state, but it was indifference. I just didn't care. So that's when I realized this was not my typical, I need to just make a list and organize myself and then fix this myself. This was, okay, this is next level burnout. And I also can't afford to do this because I have a lot of people depending on me getting my butt up, going into the shop, building furniture, filming it. And it's just all of the crap that we have to do that isn't building furniture and that isn't filming that content. Everything else about it, I kind of hate. So you guys know what I'm talking about, the game, right? You could build furniture, you could film it, but just knowing that a video of mine can be sunk on the order of hundreds of thousands of views, whether I title it and thumbnail it correctly. That is so defeating because guess what? I could give I'm not going to try not to cuss here, but I don't care about that thumbnail. I want to show you an honest depiction of what this video is going to be about. Unfortunately, that will tank your video. And the realization that I can't ignore that anymore, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. That was rough. So I talked to Matt about this a little bit too, because we've been comparing notes a little bit about like what our businesses are going through and the kind of burnout sort of thing. And I thought it would just be interesting to bring up on the show to see if you guys have ever really confronted it at that level in woodworking, like completely losing your motivation, and then how you may have gotten out of it.
Well, it was really interesting timing because the three of us started this conversation when I released a video in the hand tool school that essentially just said what Marc said.
Yeah.
Completely independent, so it was like one of those, like Marc texts me like immediately. He's like, oh my God, dude, I was just going through this. So, and the funny part is, again, this was a video put on the hand tool school, so it's not really a public thing. But the number of emails and messages that I've got, several hundred from hand tool school members saying the same thing, like, and from a different perspective. I mean, Marc and Matt are both in a unique situation where they've got this content business that's going on. And I have the same business, but mine has always been different in the fact that I've never been a sponsored type person. Hand tool people just, just doesn't happen. And I never decided to play the game. And I was shocked when I have had success on YouTube that it's all been attributed to what Marc just said. Mm-hmm. Like something about the thumbnail is what drove it. And it was like, holy crap. But from my perspective, I came at this from a different end. And I think in some ways could probably be very similar to like a professional furniture maker where I have another job and it's in wood. And I spend 50 hours a week, surrounded by wood and dealing with wood and working with people buying wood and carpenters and contractors and all that fun stuff. And I would come home at the end of the day and, certainly be tired anyway, because I've been at work all day long.
Sure.
And go down to the shop and start my other job. And then it just started to wear on me when I realized like, crap, I'm putting in, 12, 14, 15 hours a day, all about woodworking. And there's no question that especially in the last year, there's been much more blurring of the lines between the day job and my personal business. Mm-hmm. And the Lumber Update has contributed a lot to that, even though the Lumber Update is in no way affiliated with my, W-2 employer. Yeah. I don't make any secret. In fact, my street cred for that show kind of comes from the fact that I work for this oldest lumber company in the country. Mm-hmm. But there was just no break, none at all. And it's funny because I think that's, certainly I got myself back into shape back in 2017, but I think that's one of the reasons that's allowed me to dive back down the bicycling rabbit hole, because I needed something that wasn't woodworking, because all of my life was woodworking, all day long. And I mean, I get phone calls at my day job office from people who listen to this show and the Lumber Update. And it's cool. Like, don't get me wrong. That's awesome. But like after a while, you're like, okay, I need to not talk about wood for a while. I need to not do some woodworking.
Yep.
And it was manifesting in, I would come down to my shop, and I've always been like super OCD when it comes to scheduling my time. It's just the only way I can be productive. And I have storyboards for projects that I'm building. I don't script anything. I've been doing this long enough. I don't really need to script anything, but I have ideas of shot lists and things like that. I've got my projects broken into chapters, how they'll be, in order to teach it. So I come into the shop and I've got all of my notes and I know exactly what I need to do. And just like Marc said, you're just like, dude, I just don't care.
Yeah.
And what bothered me was I would do it and I would like, say I'm cutting a dado and I like spelch the crap out of the backside of the joint. And I'm like, that'll be in the back of the case.
Right.
And that's probably, that's fine. Like I preach this to woodworkers all the time. Like, dude, if it's not going to be seen, don't obsess over it. Like the floor of your mortise doesn't have to be pretty because the tenon goes in there, But I found myself being almost apathetic about stuff like that. And I just wasn't into anything I was building. I think I texted Marc this. I just want to go ride my bike and play my Nintendo Switch. Like, that's all I want to do. And Marc's like, preach.
Yeah.
I hear it.
We live parallel lives because that's exactly what I did with my time.
Yeah. And it was good. Like, I guess the nice thing is the balance there. Like, just sitting on the couch playing the Switch would probably not be good for me. So at least, getting out and riding 50 miles is good for me, good for my brain and my body at that point.
You should play the Switch while you ride.
Yeah, that would not be good for.
Same time.
Yeah, that would not be good for the body.
Maybe not. Well, Matt, I'm curious to hear from you. Like, because here's the other thing: that a lot of this just comes down to like a core energy, a core motivation. So when you're talking about the spelching at the back of the dado, maybe a Shannon of full energy, with full energy behind this and positivity, would have that extra little bit of will to say, yeah, no one's going to see it, but this is for me. I want to make sure this looks good. That takes a lot to actually bring that extra bit of motivation to do it just because you have a standard and you're going to meet that standard. So Matt, you're a guy that is just well known as being like, you're always on. You've always got something to do. You've always got some major project.
I always have something to do. Yes.
Yeah. You got 3 kids. You got a busy family life. You got a wife who is running a campaign. I mean, there's a lot going on in your life. I mean, have you flirted with this whole burnout thing at some point?
I mean, recently or
maybe ever.
Or
I mean,
in the past,
Today,
I guess.
just today, Matt.
I don't want to
Just
give you
today.
any ideas now if you feel good.
I don't know.
Are you feeling good, Matt? Let's push you. Let's push you off the ledge.
Let's bring it down
think
to our level.
when I started, working for myself and kind of getting that balance of, okay, now I have kids and I'm working for myself and I have all these things that I want to accomplish. It was so easy to just keep adding things, which just means working more and more hours. The time that I've found that point, you gotta find where the heck your cliff is before you fall off it to not fall off it again, was during the highboy, doing that. And the one thing that told me to my soul that I was burnt out and I can't keep doing this, I gotta dial it back, was the fact that when I was with my family, I was thinking, can we be done with family stuff so I can get back to work and finish what I'm working on? And I'm like, as soon as I had the mental realization that was going on, I'm like, this is wrong. This is not sustainable. This is not the life that I want to have for myself.
Yeah, it's out of balance.
So it was trying to find that balance again and kind of never go back to that point again. So that's one style of burnout, I guess, or just a realization that I can't work as much or as hard as I was. I need to really dial that back. Now it's just weird. The industry has changed so much that has affected the business to such an extreme that I'm also stuck doing this kitchen thing that I thought would be more, I'll just say profitable, I guess, wherein the reality is I lose money on every single video I make just in post-production costs.
God.
I can't even cover my own
That's not great.
editing costs on these videos.
Yeah.
And even a year or two ago, it wasn't that big of a deal because it was the sponsors were subsidizing this content. It was content I'm like, okay, not a lot of people are going to watch it, but the people who will watch it will really enjoy it. So the sponsors can foot the bill, and it's fine. It's not a big deal. I can do that. But as those dollars went away, I'm like, okay, first of all, I always knew that project videos always perform the worst for me because the number of people that are interested in that level of detail of the stuff that I make is very small. So I already knew that going into this, but I'm like, this is a little more broader topic. Maybe I'll have a little bit of a larger audience. Yeah. It hasn't. So that's sort of defeating itself too.
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
you're too good, Matt. Seriously. I think people the traditional DIYer who will be looking for making their own kitchen cabinets or renovating the cabinets, they get 2 minutes into one of your videos and I'm like, okay, this guy's way beyond my league.
I already
and they click away.
I came to that realization already too. I'm like, yeah, this is too high level for most people to be interested in.
Yeah.
But at the same time, though, there are channels, there are videos out there that show someone performing at a high level that people just want to watch the heck out of just because it's fascinating to watch what they do, right? But nailing that perfect mix that the algorithm is looking for, there's a real unfun part of the job.
Yeah, well, the other thing too is if you're just looking at YouTube, I think the way that people are using it and engaging with it has changed so much. Whereas 5 years ago, if you're a subscriber, it's going to show you my videos every single time. Now, if you don't watch my videos for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, because I'm still doing weekly content for some stupid reason, then they're not going to be shown to you anymore. And then you're going to be missing more and more and more episodes until the point where it's I just automatically unsubscribed you from this channel now because you don't watch it anyway.
Yeah.
So
it is shocking how fast that happens too.
Well, Shannon, we talk about cycling stuff, right? And GCN, and I started to get into watching more mountain biking. And as I gravitated to the mountain biking GCN channel, I'm using these other areas to see what people are experiencing as our viewers over time. So I got distracted for a week. Got distracted for maybe a week, 2 weeks watching mountain bike stuff. The regular GCN content went off the map. I just don't. Same thing like desk organization. I was watching a lot of desk organization videos when I moved into this house and kind of redid my office. Just inspiration videos, right? I still have subscriptions to some of those channels. I never see their stuff. And it truly is something where subscriptions just don't matter anymore. The fact that I have like 800 some thousand subscriptions, that's nothing. Do you know what that is? That impresses the kids next door who's like, oh, you have that many? Like,
right. Yeah.
They're super impressed by it, but does it actually put food on the table? No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean anything. Interesting. Yeah. So in going down this path, I'm very curious if you guys, obviously you made a course adjustment, Matt, before to get back to a point of balance. But I can at least speak specifically about the things I did that I feel like got me back on track. I won't say that I'm 100% where I was before, but I do think I'm way better and way more motivated now than I was a week ago. A couple different things. First of all, I got off of social media, completely off of social media. I let Nicole handle everything. And if there's anything that comes up, let me know so I can answer a question or whatever. Mm-hmm. But getting off social media, and I've given that advice on this show before, that sometimes with some personalities, the way you internalize looking at other people's successes, other people's progress can actually be really, really negative to you mentally. So I got completely off social media. I went back to early content that inspired me. So this is content that certainly predates YouTube. I would go back and I watched some Woodworks episodes. I literally just sat on the couch, fired up the Plex server, and found some David Marc stuff to watch. I got about 2 episodes in before I started to go, oh man, I feel like doing something. Like a little something in my brain clicked that I feel like doing something in my shop. And I'm also at home. The shop's 10 minutes away. I'm not going to the shop that day, but it lit something, right? So I saw that happen. I also focused on a couple of creature comforts in the shop and started to think, where the TV is right now, it's kind of in the way of the shop. Maybe if I move the TV over there, move the Sonos speaker over that. Like I went down that path of things that have nothing to do with woodworking, but they improve the shop space and make it more of my man cave that I have a good time and like spending time in. That helped me kind of feel more positive about the shop. And then for me, the final thing was I found someone who needed something. So I asked around, talked to my mom. This is where the coffee bar project came from. And knowing that a person needs a thing and they want me to make it, and the expectation is that I'm going to do it the way I normally do it, like to the best of my abilities, was enough inspiration for me to go, all right, let's fire up SketchUp. Let's make a basic case. Let's see if we can get this thing going. And all of those things combined, and including, we started a new feature for Guild Plus subscribers where we do a watch along. So I think it's every Wednesday, we queue up an episode of either Woodworks, New Yankee, Roy Underhill, just whatever we can access on YouTube, queue up an episode and watch it as a group, which is super fun. But part of the reason I did that was because I feel like I need that weekly medicine injection. I need a David Marc's injection is what I need. And honestly, that really helped balance me out. And I feel 1,000 times better now. Of course, Shannon, we're on the same page. During that week, I was cycling as much as I possibly could. I was going to the gym as much as I possibly could. I just needed to tire myself out on this other thing so that I can kind of clear my mental slate and then start over. And it did help. It worked. But man, was that scary for a few days, because right now my whole family is 100% dependent on the Wood Whisperer going and doing things. And then we have other families now. Todd's a full-time employee and he's got a kid. He's got 2 kids. And there's just a lot riding on this business succeeding. So I can't just check out for a week and not work. So that definitely helps. So how about you guys? Shannon, I mean, you did this just recently as well.
Yeah.
What kind of things helped?
Yeah, it's always been interesting from a financial perspective. I have lived off of the hand tool school for probably 10 years now. I'm in this wonderful position where I have a W-2 job at the same time. And honestly, that gives me health insurance, and I pad the heck out of my 401k. Until the government says you can't contribute anymore, I'm maxed to the hilt, and it's fantastic. What a great thing to have that. But yeah, it's something that I have to be aware of. I can't let my personal business slip, because that does pay the bills. That's where the majority of my income is coming from. But I also realized that I needed to cut myself some slack. And I think this is typical of any content creator, membership site owner. You feel like you constantly have to be creating new stuff. And you get into this, whether it's weekly videos for YouTube or weekly videos for your membership site. So I kind of stepped back and I looked at my analytics, and I looked at like just how many views were happening in like the first week to 2 weeks of that new video that I had to put out every single week. And it was like, man, like I'm killing myself. And like they're getting views, but they're getting views cumulative. Like if I stop doing this every single week, is that really going to make a difference? And then I started looking at what I was actually doing. And there's no question, I really enjoy teaching hand tools. I enjoy that kind of light bulb moment when people learn to saw straight. And dissecting, is that a word? Dissecting
it is now.
That with individuals, because there is no one thing. You can come up with, YouTube algorithms to say, saw better by doing this. Everybody's going to have their own body mechanics issues, and being able to get on Zoom with somebody and correct any sawing mechanic issues they have, that's really incredibly rewarding to me. Mm-hmm. But I'm not building anything when I'm doing that. And I suddenly realized that for me as a woodworker, I had stopped woodworking and I'd become a woodworking teacher. Mm-hmm. And again, love that, but that wasn't inspiring. So I dug up this old Evernote file that I created that has just a bunch of projects that I wanted to build, like bucket lifts type things. And I'm like, I haven't built any of these. And I started referencing all these photos. And the crazy part is I was looking at the metadata, and a couple of these images were like saved from the web 12 years ago. And I still hadn't built it. It's like something about that really resonated with me, and I really wanted to build that. The conoid chair, the Nakashima conoid chair. Yeah. I mean, the image I have of that, the original image I have of that was from 2010. I have photos from the Renwick Gallery before it closed and it's reopened again, but that was from like 2014. It's like, I wanted to build this chair forever. And I started pulling together all these projects of things that I kind of always wanted to build. And the crazy part is I assembled a lot of these, and I was having a face to camera video. It was my I'm quitting YouTube thing for the hand tool school. Basically, it was like, dude, guys, I'm tired. I'm burnt out. And I started showing images of these photos. And it was funny, as I was editing that video, my entire cadence, my entire attitude, my shoulders like rose. I became excited and passionate. And that was a real kind of light bulb moment when I realized I've spent a lot of time building things or instructing other people, and I haven't built anything for myself. It's a really selfish statement, I know, but
No, it's true.
It's one of the many things that people who say they used to build furniture for a living and got into content, like they love that they don't have to be beholden to, a commission to a customer, and being able to build whatever you want. I've been in that situation for many, many years, and I haven't been doing that. The other thing, Marc hit on this, is just cleaning up my space, reorganizing my space, clearing out my space. And with that came a project that I've been sitting on for like 8 months. Mm-hmm. And I just hate it. I'm so tired of it. I've got to finish it because I put a lot of effort into it, not only in material and time, but I've filmed a lot of it. I have several chapters already filmed and produced and sitting, waited to be uploaded to my media server. I need to finish this. But I just can't do it. And that's one of the things that's been dragging me down. I walk in, I've got this huge case piece that's physically taking up a lot of room in my tiny little 300 square foot shop. So I just moved it out of the shop. I just wrote it off. Now, hopefully I'll get back to it at some point. Yeah. I need to, but just that and cleaning that space out. I still have some lumber and things that have come over from the day job that I've been, sometimes it's just easier to use my own planer at home than it is to get time on the planer at the millwork. So I just bring stuff home to plain finish off or whatever. It's like, I need to clear that out. I need to thoroughly dust the place. That has really changed things around for me. Just being able to look at some projects. The other thing I will say to Matt's highboy thing, smaller projects, they can be super complex, but smaller. Not staring down. And that's one of the things, this case piece, it's a big piece of furniture. Mm-hmm. And I can't bring myself to do that. But it's like, I have this one piece. Remember Brad Ferguson, Tree Frog Furniture?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. I still follow him on Facebook.
Talking about one of those guys that was heavy in the blogosphere back in the, the aughts.
Yeah.
Who just kind of disappeared. I have an image of Brad's of a Kumiko cabinet. And this is before like Fine Woodworking went on their crazy Kumiko bend, before anybody knew to call
before
it Kumiko.
Kumiko was cool.
Yeah.
Right. I've had that image in there, and it's so funny. Like, I remember pulling it up and thinking, well, I can't do that now because Kumiko, like, yet everybody else has done Kumiko, and there's nothing new about that. And it's like, you know what? I don't care. I want to do it.
You
I
want to
build it. And I think that's what's really getting me excited now is kind of, and the affirmation that I got from the hundreds of emails from that hand tool school video was, I'd like to see that too, you know?
Yeah.
Go ahead and build it. And the fact of the matter is nobody actually builds the projects that we build. They, change it. Maybe they just use the techniques from it to build something else entirely. Sure. It's rare that people will build exactly what I actually show a project video of. So I just had to get over that and recognize that it's time to start building the stuff that I want to build, frankly.
Yeah. You know what's wild about listening to you describe it that way? Part of my problem was I was mourning the loss of what you're just about to get into. So when I started, it was all about, I would constantly get this, when are you going to build furniture again? Hey, you don't build anything new. And I'm like, I know, because I'm busy doing the live stuff. I'm busy doing everything else. But then at some point, I can't remember when it was, but at some point, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, I was like, you know what? I just want to build. I just want to build stuff, and I will build, I'll document, and everything else will work itself out, right? And I've been doing that. And that's what I'm mourning the loss of, because the pivot in the business recently was to do exactly what you're getting away from. We are pivoting back toward teaching. And I know it's going to be at the expense of my own personal growth, because I'm going to be so focused on showing other people how to do other things, like the things I already know how to do, and not so focused on projects. And I know I'm going to hear the comments pretty soon on, hey, when are you going to build something? It's like, well, I'm building a business is what I'm doing, unfortunately. So I don't know, maybe in 5 years, I'll be sick of that and then go do the same thing you're doing. And hey, you know what? I'd like to build furniture again. I'm
actually kind of hopeful though, because I've spent so much time teaching woodworking that I don't think I can stop. So one of the things I realized is even some of these really very specific projects that I want to build, there's still a ton of lessons in there.
Yeah.
And I don't think by me diving into, I'm just going to build for myself, I don't think I could stop teaching. You guys know I have a hard time stop talking anyway, so I don't think that'll be a problem.
Oh boy, do we, Shannon. We know.
I know my faults.
But no, I get it. And I feel the same way. I don't know that I would ever just build a thing and never tell anybody about it. It's in my nature to want to share that information. I find it really gratifying, but I do have a little bit of a need to share it the way I want to share it, not the way the systems are telling me to share it. You make a great piece of content, a couple hours long. What's the smart thing to do with it? Pilfer it for all the vertical video you can. Pull this stuff out of there. But that's a whole nother part of this business that I want no part of. It's just it's so draining on me to even think about doing all that crap. So I don't know, Matt. We've the two of us have talked a lot. Obviously, we said that you're not currently dealing with a situation like that, but you got any thoughts?
There's some similarities there. It's like the same thing you said about when are you going to make stuff again. Like people have been asking me when I'm going to show myself making things for years.
Man, I hear that about you.
For the last 3 years straight, I've done more making stuff videos than I ever have in my entire career prior to doing this.
Yeah.
And it's still, I already knew the answer. It's not that exciting to most people, which again is fine. So I'm looking forward to the pivot back to doing more things like I used to like 5-6 years ago, where I do more in-depth builds in the guild.
Yeah.
And then just have like a quick little, here's a summary video that more people enjoy the summary videos because there's not that much detail. It's just a real quick, here's what happened. And people like that because they're only really interested at the surface level, which is fine. Mm-hmm. And then for the people that really are interested, well, they can vote with their wallets and they can buy the class. Right. And then I don't feel like the need to oh my gosh, I'm spending all this time. How do I recoup that? How do I produce these videos that have some kind of monetization scheme built in? Mm-hmm. Like right now, if I was doing that only on YouTube, okay, now I got to be like, all right, we're in the middle of the video. Here's my affiliate link for this thing I'm using right now. Make sure you click on it and buy a bunch of stuff. Also, here's this other thing that you should probably buy too. And here's a t-shirt. Buy that too. I don't really want to be doing that either. But it's starting to pivot that way where I kind of have to.
What choice do you have?
But even, it's weird. It's going to be an interesting transition back to normalcy here. Yeah. When I actually can start building furniture pieces again and doing things that excite me as far as actually making things. the things that I'm making excite me, and I get more into the teaching the things that I actually know and actually have some confidence about.
Right. Yeah. Instead of always trying to learn on the job.
That's what I've been doing the last like 3 years. I've been learning about carpentry.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, okay, and now when people are like, oh, you're a really good carpenter, I'm like, I guess finally I have done the time and I have some carpentry experience.
Yeah.
But before that, when people are like, you're a good carpenter, I'm like, that's not even what this is at all. I don't.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. Well,
really
if the YouTube thing doesn't
that.
pan out, you got a backup plan now.
That's
I would
true.
starve.
Yeah, I'll
I think
hire
I
you,
would
Matt.
starve. Great.
Custom kitchens.
Yeah, I'm gonna
you
go.
Just gotta wait 3 years to get it installed.
But it'd be really good. It'll be
It's gonna be
exactly
good.
what you want.
Yeah, when it's done.
And everything's
the style,
custom.
the style may change by the time it's done, but
It's
don't
fine.
worry about that.
Don't worry about it. It's paint grade. Just paint a different color. It's fine.
Yeah, there you
Right,
go.
Yeah.
It only takes 3 weeks.
I think the one thing, I mean, we all have very specialized situations, and in many instances, a lot of this stems from the business of what we do. But those of you listening to this, and I have affirmation of this in my inbox from Hand Tool School listeners, this is not just us. You know, we may have different triggers, we have different catalysts that cause this, but I have spoken to a lot of hobbyist woodworkers who don't make any money from their woodworking who experience this. And a lot of the same triggers cause it, and a lot of the same solutions cause it. So, you know, certainly it's not that part of the show, but I would say we'd love to hear from you as well. Like, you know, write in, what did you experience? And more importantly, how did you get out of it? And it's probably not just woodworking. I mean, everybody goes through anything you're involved in constantly, and you get really, really passionate about something, and at some point it's gonna fade, or you're gonna get frustrated or something like that. We just have it on steroids because of, well, YouTube. Just blame YouTube.
Everybody's watching.
Well, and that's the thing, as we're talking about this, I didn't really even intend for this to be a content creation talk, which I know we try to avoid doing on the show because most people don't care. But I do think a lot of this is relevant to people who are either pro woodworkers or people who have just been doing it for a long time. There could definitely be people who are getting that burnout experience and might need some, you know, tips or encouragement for how to keep going. I mean, in the past, one of the things I used to tell people, especially if it's a pro woodworker and they would ask me for advice on burnout, part of me was just like, well, man up. You know, I hate that phrase. It was a man, so I can say that. Because ultimately, this is what you're doing to make your money. So you need to do your job. Like, and in the end, that's first and foremost. And now I'm like, well, I kind of see it a little differently now, because I could have told myself that same advice. Just man up, get your ass in the shop, start working. But so much of what we do relies on us being buoyant personalities and happy about what we're doing and energetic. So if you're just building something for a client, you could throw on your headphones, put a grimace on your face, and get through it. Right? I can't do that necessarily. I've got to smile the whole time, and I got to look like I'm having a great time doing it.
Yeah.
So a little bit different.
There's that. There's definitely that. Like, that's like as a way that I don't even like do this like consciously, but like if I don't post anything to my Instagram story for like a week, that's because of that. I'm like, I'm not that excited about what I'm doing. I don't really want to be a smiling face on a story right now. I'm not going to really post anything.
Right.
Just look at, if you ever have, if you're sorting through your meditating your video or whatever to edit, and the expression on your face, like in between shots, like if you keep the camera rolling, and there's that little transition, okay, and now I'm gonna actually be talking to the camera, and you'd be like doing stuff or whatever, and then suddenly it's like, okay, now, and it's like it's so very, very obvious there's a different personality there. The only other thing I will say is an effort to not make this about content entirely is I heard from a lot of people who said their burnout in woodworking, because woodworking was their hobby, woodworking was their escape, their burnout at their other job was causing it to carry over, and they were not their what I used to do to release the stress was in woodworking anymore. And now things have gotten so bad at my day job that I don't even feel like woodworking. And I mean, that's called depression. It happens to everybody. You know, there's all kinds of chemical things that go on there. Sometimes it's just called middle age.
Sometimes you're just getting older.
You know, just knowing that I'm in that age demographic and I'm getting ads in my social media for things like, are you low on testosterone? I'm like, leave me alone. I feel fine.
Probably.
Most likely, I'm almost 50. Shut up. But that was interesting to me. And that was a different, and I started to relate that to, well, you know, yes, my day job is in woodworking, but there's been a hell of a lot more stress on my day job. I now have like people that report to me and all that fun stuff that never had before. And I have a strong suspicion it was the same way. And like the number of computer programmers, doctors, lawyers that I heard from, they're like, my day job is so stressful and I get home and I have no energy. And I know that I need to get in the shop because the shop is like meditative and it refreshes me, but it's dragging me down and now I'm just skipping it. Or like you get that spelch in the backside of the board and you're apathetic about fixing it, but it probably wouldn't happen if you were switched on in the first place and you're going through the motions. Yeah. So it's just my way of trying to make this more, approachable to everyone listening. Yeah. So they're not just I wish I was a YouTube creator.
Yeah. Well, and I know a certain percentage of people who listen, while even if they've never met us before, consider us sort of friends, like we've kind of talked a lot about our lives and talked about how we feel about things and people get to know us. And this is kind of like sometimes, little Taylor Swift heart action. I think it's good sometimes to kind of let them know that like, look, we're just real people doing the things that we're trying to do to succeed and do right by our families and do right by the audiences that listen and watch what we do. And, I'm going into my 19th year of doing this. It's a lot of time talking about woodworking, and I'm super lucky. And I think that's one of the things I had to try to recalibrate is remembering how lucky I am to be able to do this. But it's real hard when you have that apathy creep in.
It's real hard.
Yeah, when you've got that apathy creeping in and someone goes, well, look, you should be thankful. You're lucky to have what you have. And I'm like, that doesn't help. Like, you're not wrong.
You're right. I get it. But
it's not helping me right now.
It doesn't help.
Yeah, it's like that expression, well, you can just deduct on your taxes. I still have to pay for it now.
Someone still has to pay for it. And it won't be free in the end.
Right. And it's not going to give me a 1-for-1 return here.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, I think that's about all we're going to say about that. But we do want to hear from you folks if this is something you've dealt with outside of the content realm, how you contended with it, what techniques you used to get out of it. Did you get out of it? Maybe... Well, I guess if you got out of it completely, you probably wouldn't listen to this show, right? Like if you just totally changed careers and moved into something else. But anyway, we do want to hear from you. But in the meantime, we're going to take a little break and we'll come back with some questions. All right, so we're back. We're back. Get ready for the questions.
Hello.
Right. Hey. Matt, actually, it looks like you're leading us off.
I am. Follow my lead. Here we go.
I will. Following the leader.
First question. From Emerson, I'm trying to get my wood past a tight riving knife and looking for suggestions without having to swap out my new thin kerf blade. The blade kerf is 2.3 millimeters and the rigid knife is 2.43, enough to make my wood say, ooh, that's kind of tight.
Oh, baby.
Wax, polish, don't risk it. Seriously though, I can see some bad outcomes for trying to force a piece of wood through. Later model rigid knives are 2.3 millimeters, but I can't find one for my model. All right, so what you do, you take some 60-degree sandpaper, you stick it down to your table saw table, you take your riving knife, you rub it all over on that sandpaper until it's thin enough. Next question.
Perfect. That's exactly what I would have said to do. I don't see there's any reason to add anything to that. Shannon, you got anything?
No.
Can you tell we're trying to end the show on time? Next question is
Get me out of here.
We're trying not to burn out. Give us a break. John wrote in, he says, I'm contemplating a non-epoxy. Once again, people having to specify that their dining tables are not epoxied. Talking about burning out, that makes me want
to...
Seriously, I'm done.
That makes me want to just punch someone who's innocent, just for the fun of it.
Who's innocent?
Okay.
Great.
I'm contemplating a non-epoxy dining table build using some soft maple slabs that I've acquired. I will mill the slabs into as wide a boards as I can and glue them up and get them surfaced so that my final dimensions will be about 84 by 35 by 2.5. I want to add a fairly significant under-bevel, leaving about 3/4 of an inch on the edge and cutting at a 16 degree or 74 degrees, depending on how you measure it, angle, so that the bevel ends about 6 inches from the edge of the bottom of the table. My question is this: how in the heck do I do that? I have a table saw, but I don't think I'm lifting the whole tabletop and running it through my table saw. The blade isn't long enough anyways. I thought about getting a track saw, but it turns out that they use little dinky blades. Do I make an angled sled for my router? Do I use a 4-inch handheld power planer? Is there another solution I'm not imagining? John, if you look at some of my recent videos, I've done a couple big dining tables, like walnut dining tables in the last couple of years. And I do show ways that we've tackled that. I've used various power tools to do it, but the one that kind of looks like the easiest and fastest method is the one you mentioned, the handheld power plane. Once you have your guidelines on there, on both dimensions, on the edge and on the underside, go to town with that hand power planer. It's quite fun to do it, and you can get really, really close to your final line, and then just switch over to smoothing tools. And here's the thing, it's on the underside. No one's going to see it. So as long as you get the edge that they are going to see, the peak of that as it makes its turn upright to make your 3/4 inch edge. As long as you get that perfect, everything else behind that is a little bit less important. I will switch over to a hand plane sometimes to just kind of clean it up and work it down a little bit more before I go on to a sander. But that handheld power plane, I personally think is the best and most efficient way to go about it. Anything to add, guys, or are we moving on?
Nope. Just did that exact same thing at my day job this past week.
Nice.
Those things are fun.
Yeah, they are.
So this is from William. He says, lumber yards are good at talking about discounts. They are. They don't
Not
really.
the ones I go to.
I was going to say, which lumber yards are you going to? But these lumber yards don't really have the discount. Talking about the discount is the easy thing, but they don't know how to give the discount, which is the most important thing. I'm not really following him
What
here.
are we talking about here, William?
I have no idea.
I've found that bulk ordering lumber from my local supplier ends up with only a portion being used for my project. I get a discount, but with the waste, I'd rather handpick the boards for the project, which normally ends up being cheaper, easier to move, and less space to store. So how do you get good lumber at a reasonable price at a slightly larger scale than the hobby woodworker? I was going to work in a joke about Matt's crotch, but this is a little long-winded. There's always room for a joke about Matt's crotch.
There's always room for Matt's crotch.
Absolutely.
Right, always room for crotch.
And if there's not room, you make room.
David Marc's injection.
Yeah, there you go.
That is our show title, by the way. That has to be it.
Oh, I already
David
typed
Marc's
it.
injection. Yeah,
I already
it has to be
typed
there.
it. Yep.
It's just an unspoken agreement, I think.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, certainly I get emails. I see lumberyards talking about discounts or move lists and things like that. I don't really see a lot of lumberyards actively talking about discounts based upon the volume of the order, although that's kind of unspoken. The more material you buy, the cheaper the cost per board foot can be. That's just economics, frankly. So if you're talking about how to get good lumber at a reasonable price at a slightly larger scale, I mean, if you're talking about handpicking your boards, if like that's what you're going to demand to get reasonable lumber, it's not going to happen because you're going to someone else's yard, and don't think lumber yard, like go into somebody's backyard and sift through their stuff. Pick out the stuff that you like. It's just not gonna fly. If you're gonna buy in larger quantities, the reason that lumber is gonna have a lower board foot cost is just reduced labor. If I can go out in a forklift and remove, a single pack that I don't have to break and change and re-enter in my inventory system and just hand deliver the single pack to you, that's very little labor. Moreover, the grade associated with a pack of lumber is an average grade for the most part. I'm making a generalization here, but when you buy it that way, if I buy 1,000 board feet of FAS lumber, not every single board in that stack of 1,000 board feet is exactly FAS, but it's on average, it's FAS. So as people hand pick boards, they're picking out the good stuff, and then what's left is not FAS. But guess what?
AS.
The cost of that lumber is still FAS.
Yeah.
So I may have bought that lumber 4 years ago at $8 a board foot because that was the cost of that FAS. And all I've got left is number 2 common, which would be $3 a board foot. The cost is still $8. This is where move lists and things come from, where basically lumberyards are determined we don't want it anymore and we just want to get rid of it because we need room for something else. But the minute you start looking for saving money, okay, I know I work in the lumber industry, so I'm biased here, but the minute you start trying to save money on lumber and expecting high quality, it's not going to happen. The margins in the lumber industry are super small. People are not making a fortune. You may think you're getting shafted by the lumberyard. If a lumberyard is making $1 a board foot, they are killing it on margin. Most of the time, it's less than 25 cents a board foot. So there's really not that room to play with here. Yeah. So you can't have both, right? If you want the ability to perfectly match grain and color and a low price, that's really difficult to pull off. The only way you can possibly do that.
Make your own.
I was just going to say is make your own lumber.
There you go.
Possibly
cheaper.
know a guy who makes his own lumber.
How much could it be?
Get a friend that has a mill.
How much time could it take? How much effort could it be?
It's funny because William sounds like he's dealing with some shenanigans at this place too. Like they've got a discount, but and every place is different, right? It could just be crappy management. They're just making things hard for people.
Yeah, or maybe it's 10% off, and then the fine print says on everything except the walnut. And they went and bought the walnut. Or 10% off on orders over 300 board feet. And in general, like I don't agree with that. Like that's bait and switch. That's wrong. But the other thing to think about is there are so many freaking variables that affect the cost of lumber. You can go on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace and you can see, oh my God, here's walnut for $1 a board foot. And there's alarm bells going off in my head left and right. Like it's just not possible.
Yeah.
Is it green? Well, it says it's dried. Well, is it? And then how well was it dried? And is it going to have all kinds of case hardening issues? And what is the grade of this stuff? And don't forget.
Piles?
Right. Yeah. And don't forget, sapwood is not a defect. So it can be the highest grade and it can be nothing but sap. I saw an image the other day of a Facebook Marketplace, and I'm pretty sure it was a joke because it wasn't walnut. It was like pine, and it said walnut lumber for sale. I've actually seen that where it actually is walnut and it's 100% sap. It wasn't butternut. It was actual walnut.
That's kind of cool.
And it was all sap.
That might be kind of cool.
Right.
It would be neat if you can get enough of it to
do something for that.
If it's maple, that's like desirable.
Right. Yeah, right. That's
white
true.
maple.
Well, that's
Why not
what we
white
sell
walnut?
is sapwood maple.
Yeah.
That is funny.
So, I don't know. I think you're asking for your cake and eat it too. If you really want that level, buy slabs, take Matt's course on how to turn slabs into parts.
Right.
Or find a sawmill and get closer to the source. And even then, depending upon the size of that sawmill, if it's a boutique sawmill, it's just one guy running a wood miser in the woods somewhere, you may have the ability to get away with a lot more sorting and such. Mm-hmm. And in general, his prices will probably be lower anyway. If you're buying from wholesale yards, the reason that it's cheaper is because you're buying in wholesale and you're not touching the lumber. It just doesn't happen. The other extreme to that is if you want that level of hand picking every board, you can still do that and get bulk pricing if you're buying large quantities.
Yeah, you're hand picking the whole
tens of thousands of board feet. And because I'm going to buy 10,000 board feet, I want to pick out my lumber. We do that. I'm building an $85 million yacht and I want to hand select all of my teak. And oh, by the way, I'm going to buy, 17,000 board feet of it at the same time. Yeah, you can come in and hand pick it. I will even assign 2 yard workers to you to go out and
dedicated forklift.
What kind of coffee do you
no doubt. So yeah, it's the two ends of the extreme there. If you want in the middle, sorry, it just doesn't work that way.
Well, and I don't know if it's going to help him because again, this just depends on his resources, but something I've started to do recently that wasn't available to me in the past is
steal it.
Stealing it, yes.
Yes.
Just back up with the trailer, load it in, just be fast, bring a couple of strong guys.
Look like you know what you're doing, you're supposed to be there.
That's exactly.
Right.
Yeah, make sure
I'm
you get
picking up my order.
Right. Just get a piece of paper in your hand. It doesn't matter what's on it, but you should have a piece of paper.
And a tape measure.
Yeah.
I have a tape measure.
So one thing that I started to do is there's a place here locally that is a mill. And there's a guy who was like, hey, this was last year sometime, a fellow woodworker. I've got some of this extra stuff. I had to buy a whole bunch to get it. I don't need this. Do you want to buy it off of me? And come to find out, he does this quite often. And I said, hey, anytime you're going there, if you need, I don't know, cherry, walnut, white oak, any of that stuff, I will go in like halvesies on it with you because I don't necessarily want an entire pallet of this stuff, but I could certainly take a half. So we've started to do that. And this place actually does. It's not that they give discounts on the quantity. They just don't do small quantities. Like you just can't get it. So then we have gotten to the point where we can at least get to their minimum and then we save a ton of money. Now I am not picking boards at all. Like this is like you get what you get, but for the price, it is totally worth it. And I could still do something with the crappy stuff if I need to. Sure. So that's just something again.
We sell a lot of lumber to local woodworking guilds who buy 5,000 board feet, and you put 10 guys at that, and like 500 board feet goes a long way.
Yep.
The other thing is the offcast side of things. I say this all the time. Find a local millwork house. Their offcuts are usually 6 foot. There's some really high quality lumber that's in millwork houses that, they're not going to use. In many instances, they actually do throw it out. Now, don't go raid their dumpster. That's the stealing part. That's like the after dark move quickly. But, find the shop foreman and just ask him, say, here's what I'm looking for. Here's the quantities I buy in. It may not be free, but I guarantee you it will be, sometimes it'll be the cost of, a couple of 6-packs. Sometimes it will be $1 a board foot just to get the material out of there, but it's a great resource, and it's usually, already molded, not just S2S, it's S4S. Good quality stuff. It's well conditioned, kiln dried, all that fun stuff.
Good deal. All right, Matt, why don't you nail this last question, and we will have done our obligations.
We done did that.
All right, this is from Tony. Here is a problem to dwell on. Oh, don't have to answer. Just got to dwell on it. During the assembly stage, during the assembly stage of my outdoor furniture, the legs of the chairs often lift off the flat floor, and if I follow the absolute dimension of the plans, I've decided to adjust the rails to keep the legs flat on the floor. I use soft Radita pine because it's affordable for my customers. How would you deal with this? Please let me know if you have any questions. I don't have any questions. Normally, you would just trim the legs to make it not rock. That's the typical way to do that, either by, if it's someone's knocking somewhere.
I hear that.
Should I be worried? Somebody's, okay.
Just be worried if it stops.
Well, if my kids, I don't have to like knock on the door because they need me for something or whatever.
It's probably not important, Matt. Wood talk's more important.
If you smell smoke, go, but not
There's that, I guess, yes. Going back to the riving knife thing, you can stick some sandpaper down to a flat surface like a table saw, and you can rub the long leg to shorten it a little bit. If it's really far out, you can scribe the distance off of it. That's typically what you'll see if you're making like chairs, for instance. That's the way that I recommend people do it with my chair kits. If things get tweaked for whatever reason, it happens. You can do it that way. Otherwise, if doing your glue up or your assembly, if you actually clamp the legs down to the table when you're installing your rails, that could help as well, just to kind of alleviate any possibility that things kind of shift a little bit. Other than that, I don't really know if you're going perfectly off the plans. Maybe it's not perfectly enough to get things dialed in and nailed perfectly. That could be a thing too. If it's really far off, then it's probably an issue with your joinery and your angles aren't quite cut to the exacting degree they should be to make it perfect.
Do you have perspective on what he means by adjusting the rails to keep the legs flat on the floor?
I'm going to guess he's like cock-eyeing them or something.
Oh, okay.
So that
Or
they'd
maybe,
I guess something like that.
Maybe adjusting the joinery? I don't know.
That would not be my favorite way to solve that problem.
No.
Because that might be the only part of the project I would trust is correct.
Right.
You know what I mean? I would go all the way down to that foot and think the problem is down there, not at my joinery.
Yeah.
So I think your method of like the classic, how do you
he
level
didn't
a
say
stool, that type
what
of
kind of joinery he's using either.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think, right?
No.
I don't see anything in joinery, so I don't.
Well, and the other thing too, especially if this is outdoor furniture, unless this problem is substantial, like on the order of a 1/4 inch or something like that, I might not even worry about it because it's outdoor furniture. And I don't know about you guys, but any place I have that's outdoors, that if I put something on, it's not flat. It's not even remotely
Somehow your
flat.
assembly table's flatter than outside. Huh.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you even need to worry about it, but certainly, I would address this at the bottom of the leg, not so much at the top of the frame for the table.
Yeah, you can make it worse at that point.
Yeah, for sure. All right. I think it's going to do it for us. We got all the questions done. Look at us go.
Look at us committing. Look at that. Didn't even burn out.
It's a good thing
Nope.
we're not burnt out.
Not
We're
yet.
able to do this.
Well, hey, we've dealt with that on Wood Talk too. That's
that's
how we've had
quitting.
our many
not burnout.
quits.
That's just
Our
quitting.
many quits have resulted in that. Remember that this show is made possible by the generous contributions of our patrons. And if you'd like to help us out and get your name read on the show, also you can get that ad-free version of the show, head over to patreon.com/woodtalk.
Yay! And then go to woodtalkshow.com to send us your questions and comment on episodes. I don't know. Does anybody even comment on episodes anymore? I guess
Not
they
often.
do.
Only when you really anger somebody.
Yeah, right.
Outside of that, not much.
That's the other way I know that we have new listeners, because I have gotten a couple of nurse emails in my inbox lately.
There you go.
And that's
Nice.
like hundreds of episodes ago. But yeah, it's always good to know that somebody's working their way through the catalog, starting the beginning again.
Yep,
It's nice.
finding all new reasons to hate me.
all new reasons to hate me. So
Love it.
So yeah,
that
if you
hard.
want to send an email about a new reason why you hate me, about something I said in today's show, go to woodtalkshow@gmail.com. Send them there. Send voicemails for the really the strong hate speech ones. We want to hear the voicemail versions of those.
Yeah.
Those are good. And find us on Instagram. Like our stuff. You can watch this on YouTube. Like it there. Like and subscribe.
Do that, please. And we'll be sure to have a great thumbnail for this.
Yeah,
Because that's what
no
you got to
question.
do.
No
All right.
question.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you for tolerating our BS and complaining and whining. And we will see you next time.
Or will we?
Bye.
Or we won't, because we might be burned out. F it. I'm out of here.
Screw this.